and it's setting it up. This meeting is being live streamed. Got it. Hey and welcome. This is like super exciting. This is Art of Rock. It's Saturday morning. Every morning is in fact Saturday morning. Pachinka, pachinka. Wow, what can I say except this is my face right now. And look at all these buttons. Hi, Art of Rock. And you can hear my face and I can hear your face. So everything is fantastic. Welcome. First and foremost, Diana, it's so good to see you. I would like to thank and acknowledge the Tongva people who are the traditional landowners of Los Angeles. Join us every Saturday here, except next Saturday where we won't be, on ANGELSPIT'S Twitch. That's ANGELSPIT'S Twitch. Go follow ANGELSPIT'S Twitch because it's amazing. This is made possible with ANGELSPIT'S Patreon. That's it. $3 a month. Go join it. And you'll help do stuff like this and whatever mad crap I do. And you also get a free copy of everything that gets released. For example, The Bastard Gods. If you were live when The Bastard Gods got released, which is like last month, you got a copy. That's it. Go get it. It's on BANDCAMP. It's awesome. There's something else super awesome, and that's the Industrial Incisions playlist. If you're looking for new amazing music, it's right there. Several bands who are here with us now, plus a whole bunch of brilliant, amazing favorites that you need to know about. Speaking of other things, amazing things you need to know about is MTV TV. And MTV TV is there. It's non-stop amazingness from the bleeding edge. It's 24 hours non-stop. If you want to get involved, drop them an email because they're amazing and they will gladly and awesomely play your stuff. You will get to learn a new market, a new audience. You will find new music. It's fantastic. They also have a Patreon. Go back them because they need our support. Gentlemen, welcome. It's Art of Rock. Let's talk about craziness. And Alex, I think you had an amazing question that we're gonna boot the day off with.
Yeah, my question is the following. We are, as my band, are probably moving rehearsal spaces. And in the previous rehearsal space, I was using a kind of floor wedge monitor in order for my bandmates to hear myself. For me, I used in-ear monitors. And then I pointed as a wedge to my bandmates so they could hear what I'm singing. And probably the new rehearsal space won't have one. And I assume also not a PA. So I'm in the situation where I might have to buy a monitor of some sorts. And I wanted to ask you if you maybe have some ideas what to look for in terms of quality, maybe at what price ranges it makes sense in order to get like a decent product and not overspent. Yeah, and maybe what kind of connectors are good. For example, like a mic input would be good for me, but also maybe a line input where I could maybe plug in a synthesizer or a drum machine, because I would want to use it in other occasions. And of course, battery powered would also be great, but that's probably more expensive.
Yeah, don't go battery powered. You're going to need something powered. There's a whole bunch of stuff you can get from brands such as PV. Actually, you know what? I see Rezi's hand. Go, Rezi.
I was going to just jump in with any of those sort of clamshell portable 2 speakers and a mixer built into 1 unit kind of things. It's a little bit spendy, but it sounds like what you want is a rehearsal PA, not just a floor wedge. Because if you've got to do coverage for a bunch of people in a room, you want to have enough power to not turn it up so it's distorting. You want to have enough input so that you can, like, as you said, do the keyboards and backing tracks and, you know, drum machine, whatever you have. And most of those, I think Fender is probably one of the champions of that. And I'm not going to say they sound good or that they're like really useful beyond this is what we got. not this is what we wanted. And I don't know the price range. It may actually be stupid and out of there, but they do usually make like there's a 4-channel, there's an 8-channel, and then there's like a version with wireless built in for mic receivers and stuff. There's a couple of companies that we won't name that also make knockoffs of these that are all over the place. Like really, I can't name them because they change brand names so frequently. But if you do like kind of an Amazon search on portable PA kind of solutions, you're going to find these closable on wheels, maybe with a handle that comes up, get to the gig, bring it home, don't have to leave it at the rehearsal space, unless that's completely the wrong direction. But it came to mind. So let me leave it at that for this.
Because this is also a really good opportunity, if I may, for everybody to have in the band to have, like, how serious is the band?
It's purely hobbyist.
Okay. Well, it might also be a really good conversation for everybody to say, let's talk about in-ears. Let's talk about everybody getting in-ears, because getting an in-ear distribution system, like a headphone distribution amp, is actually really cheap. You go a little mixing desk, that and a couple of extended to in-ears. And does anybody else have an amp? Like a speaker
Yes,
amp?
sorry, my mouse got lost. Everyone except the drummer does have an amp. So
okay, so
yes,
therefore it is kind of loud. So
yeah.
The other question is that if there's a vocalist, right? So you're the vocalist. Oh, good on you. Okay, yeah, you got to get a PA. Yeah, a little mixer would be great. You're going to need a little 58 SM58 mic, and there's a whole bunch of really simple solutions. Skimp, but not too much, because you want something that's going to last a while, and depending on how loud everybody else is, you've got to match that volume, or they've got to bring it down a bit. You've just got to be so careful in a live situation that it doesn't come a volume war in a small room, which is why I was suggesting in-ears. But if you're using in-ears for like a 4-hour rehearsal, that could get pretty draining on your ears. So I don't know, here's the resonator.
Since you mentioned connectors, the simplicity of this solution like kind of gets it in the upvotes. It's powered, it's got the speakers, it's got the mixer, it's got the line level inputs and XLR mic pre-inputs and everything kind of all in one package. And it's a shortcut to not having to figure it out and go shopping. But Carl sort of alluded to, you're a lot more flexible. If you do want to get a rack, stick in a power amp, get a couple of speakers, and have like a mixer of any description at any price range. It's going to have digital effects built in for the other people that don't have your vocal effects. It's going to have decent mic pre's. Again, so many Chinese companies that make these things. If you want to go down a level, go up a level and get any of the name brands from companies that you're already buying desktop interfaces from for your DAW. But the connectors are going to be sorted. The input types are going to be sorted with either of these paths. Your flexibility is going to be increased a whole lot, and it's not going to be much more expensive if you go modular like that. Rack, power amp, or powered speakers, mixer separate. Then when you do want to do some with the in-ears, you can put that on a matrix mix or an aux bus or something. And when you want to have a separate extra monitor mixes, you can get separate power amp channels or powered speakers and send off the extra aux buses on your mixer and get real fancy. So it does have a ton of flexibility doing it that way. But I want to hear, what else do you have to add to the ways that we're making mistakes about your situation?
Yeah, the main problem is that it's a shared rehearsal space, and that might result in me not having too much space, so I can't put in a full PA. And also, I probably don't have the money for a full PA. That's why I was more drawn towards an active speaker solution, but of course, like it has its benefits.
Yeah. So start with one and branch out, I guess. But I think getting a mix is really important. Ivan, I think I saw your hand up. Did you want to bring anything up? No? Okay. Alex, did you want to ask anything else? Does anybody else? I see Rezi's hand.
Yeah, just before we go on from that, I mean, low end of this stuff, we're talking a couple $100, and I would deem it a pretty good investment. It may be twice what you intended to spend, but if you're going to get everybody to hear it, maybe they can chip in one time or something. But maybe it's worth it as an investment, and also it's going to hold a little bit of resale value when you want to, move it on. So it's not that bad the way I take these things. I'm looking at like Pile and JBL, as some of the companies that make like a speaker with a microphone kind of versions of this that are even lower than having the mixer. So there are ways in for powered systems. But the other thing is, if there's a chance of prioritizing on a rehearsal complex with PA, there might be a reason to argue for, this will be more fun. This will be more easy and just get in and get out kind of thing.
Yeah, the
Yeah.
problem is that I'm like the most. It sounds a bit full of myself, but I'm the most music technology competent person in the room because I've been geeking out about audio gear for like 10 years. And so there was one guitarist once, and I explained his amp to him because he didn't know how to tune in the equalizer and such. So yeah, I would need to do a lot of convincing because these are people who just want to play. They play just for fun, and it's great for me because then I can learn how to sing with a PA or with amplification without having like so much pressure because I need to perform.
Yeah. I see where you're coming from. And, there's that Roland speaker that everybody gets, they put on their keyboard rig. I mean, you could start with something like that for like no friction and just get into it. It doesn't have a mic pre, I think. It's just got line ins, but you can always use a cloud lifter or an adapter or something that you have sitting around to get your mic levels up to it. Possibly, maybe. Unless those require phantom power, in which case, never mind.
Desk.
But there's cheap ways, yeah, like cheap mixer with mic pre's. Cool.
All right. I want to thank you, Alex. I want to throw this to Raz. You brought up something really interesting about constant remixing, and that could be a very philosophically interesting rabbit hole to lose ourselves into.
Yeah. So I hope that's the right video that I had on my clipboard, just sitting there. There's a piece that this guy Kirby Ferguson has had for a few years called "Everything Is a Remix," and the topic is great. It goes from like which breakbeat was the first one that Kool Herc used to what TikTok video is the most popular sample of Olivia Rodrigo song. So it's kind of that period that it focuses on, but the spirit of it is there's a philosophical and social argument for justifying any use of anything in some ways, and then there's like sort of legal and more structured argument against it. People get very possessive about their work. Some people want everything to be free, as in information, from girl talk to Danger Mouse being very different ways of approaching that. So those are all interesting and really fertile sort of grounds. Just watch this thing if you haven't seen it. But also, he's been constantly reworking his own video. And this is, I think, the third or fourth version that he's on right now. And it's, I think, about 6 months old. So I just happened upon it. I've watched 2 versions of the previous one. And I think that's also an interesting thing. Like, we can probably name a few like really bad idea reworkings that people have done, but I just saw Al talking about redoing his heavy versions of the first album, with sympathy tunes that he can stand, and we're in an age where that's also something that I happen to have seen in the past couple of days concurrently with this. So a lot of words about copy, transform, combine. Those are sort of the process of everything being a remix and how to make art. Just food for thought.
I love it. If I may, so one really other interesting question, because I'm so cautious about sampling, you could almost say I'm anti-sampling, but I'm not. I'm just super cautious about freaking sampling. Is that when I, have the displeasure of scrolling through stupid social media and dumb fucking memes, I hear people saying the dumbest shit. And I keep going, wow, I could sample that. That's way more interesting than, anything else. But it's like, so what are the legalities with that? I mean, technically, I think TikTok or Instagram own those recordings. That's my understanding, but that wouldn't be the case because it's all everything's cross posted. So where's the legality in this? I don't know. The whole concept of adaption and adoption is what drives the human species forward with science, technology, music, art, everything, philosophy, the whole lot. In the 90s when I was getting into samples, wow, I sound old now. In the 80s when I was getting into samples, it was only becoming a big issue, and it was really the legal battle with the Turtles. Like, was it like super early 90s? Where was it? Fucking Paul and Oates versus the Turtles. I can't remember. I don't give a shit. I do give a shit. It was a landmark thing where, but I think I don't think everything is free because people have got to pay their rent, and I'm one of them people. And the other people who don't want to pay their rent want to pay their rent with music. And I keep going, so how do you expect to pay your rent with music if everything's free? I don't understand. I think it's really important. Sure, use samples, and then if you're not happy with them, take them out if you're not feeling safe about it. But it's totally okay to be inspired by something. Like if you get inspired by a piece of music or something and you try and replicate it, it's going to come out differently. So I say do it. I say be inspired, and let it go, let it flow. Treat it as if these things are teaching you something. They're your teacher. Learn from these things, and I just say if you stay true on the path, because one thing I heard, which is fantastic, is I think it was Severed Heads would say that they pull in a Frank Sinatra or something, a really big obvious sample, create the song around that, and then just pull the sample out. And what was left there was often this really interesting shell that then grew to become something else. So there you go, rant. Alex, tell me your rant.
I think the way it works is that the people recording the video own the copyright, and only Instagram has the right through the EULA to publish it. What some people do is recreate the samples and then use that. So they take like a string library and arrange it in a way that sounds like the sample, and then use that. And sometimes you can hardly tell the difference, but of course it's very labor intensive. And something I do is I just sample myself because I know I won't sue myself, probably. So and also like I feel like sampling gives your music a certain aspect that it wouldn't have if you just were recorded synths or live instruments, because something happens when it gets like rearranged, time morphed. I don't know.
Fantastic, thank you. Ivan, I want to go in after you, but please, I want to hear your thoughts.
So yeah, there's a sample has become a very overloaded term to begin with. But like early 90s, late 80s, stealing a chunk of a TV commercial because they said fun things, or stealing, Al Gore on the PMRC hearings because how many times could that guy say, anal sex or bondage and make it sound uncomfortable? It's a lot. I have all of them. Yeah, there's that, and then then there's like actually like swiping music, or sampling. The KLF used to love to joke about that because they did it so much and it worked for them, but that was back under a very different legal environment where they could get away with it. At the same time, like since caveman times, new music happens because some new guy comes along and tries to copy a guy that was already good. Game over. I mean, we've got Kevin Key because we had David Sylvian. We've got fill in the blank because we had it's rinse and repeat. And there's absolutely, not only is there nothing wrong with doing it that way, but that is actually the expected way to do it. But like if you want to cheat and just like drag in some of these samples, I mean, we've got fancy tools now. We could, drag in the audio file into Ableton, dump the MIDI out, and then just stuff new instruments into it and then claim it's ours, which is vaguely uncomfortable. Or you could listen to it and play the stuff in, which is going to end up sounding better anyways, just because you're going to bring your own groove to it, which is a good thing. I would, but like that like early 90s, just like steal 30 seconds of somebody else's already well-known song and then claim that you've somehow made something new and amazing from it. I'm a little bit iffy on that. We should be uncomfortable there.
Fantastic.
Also, I worked in the entertainment industry. All those people that you have ignored because you don't watch the full credits, they need to get paid. Gaffers need to get paid. The best boy needs to get paid. The food service folks, they need to get paid too. So let's make sure that we do that. All right, I'm out.
Thank you. That's brilliant, man. Thank you so much. Vance, I want to hear your brain.
All right, here's my thoughts on sampling shortly. Like it's as short as I can make it. I don't see the point in sampling someone else's finished product when there is already so much free source material available that is already pre-cleared and you can just have it. Like most of what I make is made of samples that I have altered and turned into other things, but it's all pre-cleared samples that I got for free and I don't have to pay somebody for it because they make their money other ways and they release that for people to use without having to pay royalties on it. So why would you sample someone else's finished product when you could take already freely available samples, add your own thing to it, and have a new product to begin with that you're allowed to sell rather than stealing from someone else? Even if you recreate the sample, like you have to change it enough that it's not recognizable as that person's intellectual property, or you can't get away with it anyway. So why would you do that with something that you risk getting sued for when you could do the exact same thing with something that you have no risk of getting sued for? That's just how I feel about samples. Like if you want to use a sample, get it cleared or don't use it. Like there's no point. That's all. Just my short.
That's brilliant, man. I really appreciate that. That's bloody awesome. Alex, I want to hear your brain melt through your face, and then I'm gonna melt my brain through my face. Alex, hit me.
I had just a quick anecdote that came to mind. I found online this sample library with industrial sounds, and they sound actually kind of great, but I felt like this weird thing back in my mind that said, well, it isn't really industrial of you to use prefabricated industrial sounds. So I sort of would feel the need to either completely rearrange them or destroy them or disassemble them. or not use them at all. I don't want to tell anybody what they need to do, but at least for me, that's like some feeling that I have
Alex,
for my music.
can I just point out how many words you just used that were very industrial? Destroy, prefabricated, assemble. Like that in itself is an industrial band name. So I just totally tracked you. I want you to keep going unless I'm talking shit now, because I want to talk shit, but I want to hear what you have to say. Keep going.
I'm done.
Okay. I think that samplers are the fucking greatest instrument on earth. They really, and it's funny. I actually pulled in a disc the other day of like Emacs presets, and I went, oh my God, I forgot that this synthesizer is actually beautiful. Like, it's capable of creating beautiful things, not harsh, distorted, scary things being whacked with metal. But it's actually quite capable of creating the most lovely, big, floating pads, really beautiful, smooth or fat basses and great drums, etc. So there's another wonderful thing, which is the concept of you aim for what they strive for. What do the greats strive for? Then you should strive for that too. And it's a really nice idea. So something that's always great fun to me is read a review of sampling dude or dudette. Figure out what is interesting to them and get inspired. I have an Eno documentary on Tubi. Tubi's awesome. Tubi is so awesome. Same with Canopy. I don't know if you can get Tubi in Germany, Alex, but Canopy's another one. Canopy's also free by the American library systems, the public access library systems. So it's all like government control and stuff. And the documentaries on Canopy are amazing. Like they're like very educational, very awesome. Tubi's got some great alien conspiracy stuff and some great no budget, we couldn't even get on Netflix kind of stuff. But they've also got some bloody amazing documentaries on music and Jeff Lynne from ELO and fucking Eno. There's an Eno documentary on that, and there's an amazing documentary on the movie Alien, by the way. Pluto TV is another free streaming. Oh, thank you, Pluto TV. As is Roomby. Really? Okay, thanks. Anyway, being inundated with free movies. My thing is watch an interview about or a documentary with I Dream of Wires or someone and just go and drink this amazing inspired liqueur that is placed in front of you. Drink it. And become inspired by what these people talk about. And that's something I experimented with on the last album, most recent album. In the song "Jump for Joy," there's a sample which is actually me, and I figured out mathematically how I had to sing it. So if I dropped it, it would hit this key and this speed, and that was a horrendous pain in the dick. But I sang it kind of like really bluesy, and I didn't pitch correct it or nothing. And I just stuck it in there. And then I sampled it at 16K and then internally resampled it to 10K. So on the Emacs, it sounded super pooey, but it was great. Doing stuff like that. It's really fun to find out what powered these people and adapt that. Let it power yourself. I mean, sure, man, grab those industrial loops. They sound great. I mean, I know Hayjob's got a whole bunch of loops and they're bloody awesome. Hey, man, it's Hayjob. Or Daniel Meyer or whatever. But it's bloody good stuff. So the world is your oyster. Sample it. And then do whatever you want to it. Brett, it's so good to see your face. Talk to me.
Hey, how's it going, everyone?
Good.
My thoughts on sampling has changed a good bit over the years. Early on, back in the early days of puppy and ministry and whatnot, grabbing various politicians or anything like that and mixing it in as part of a background track was lots of fun. I'm kind of with everyone though. It's kind of, I think it's kind of run its course a little bit. It's also gotten legally taxing. So I agree with the sampling of yourself. I do that as well. One of the tricks I'll do on a regular basis is use different microphones, things like that change the way I sound, and then a lot of times I'll reverse them just to make it even creepier. The other things that I'll do is, instead of sampling beats and tones, I try to steer my samples towards what is the environment that I'm in. So for example, if I'm doing a song, about, and I've got one that I'm working on, so it's called Meeting the Angel of Death, and it takes place in a hospital. So I'm interested in the overall soundscape more than I am any particular musical aspect, and it's something that I found is just a neat way to bring the listener into the environment I'm creating. Seems to speak a little bit of a different language. I don't know what the legality of that is, but I'm also not making any money on it. So I figure there's something to that as well.
Brilliant, man. Thank you so much. You brought up some points in that I want to touch on, because there's some lovely, lovely, lovely pieces of wisdom in there. Ivan, destroy my face.
Hey, the finding like a words sample of somebody saying something that is appropriately useful for a song is an enormous pain in the ass. So one thing I'm messing with right now is using AI to replace my voice with a different voice, so I could sound like Ronald Reagan saying something that is pertinent to the song. So we'll keep everybody informed on that one. I've got like a thing I'm working on that will be using it, so hopefully it goes well. Fingers crossed. And then the thing with, you mentioned earlier, the Emacs, and I don't care what year it is since they were produced, but the Emacs and the ESI hardware is so full of opportunity that that way of doing synthesis is going to be around for the next forever. I cannot overemphasize the value in just taking your field recorder with you when you leave the house, because you're going to run into something out there in the wild that's got an inherent beat to it that you're going to want later, or it's going to have a sound to it that you're going to want later. I mean, like right now, my favorite snare sound is from a fireworks display back on 4th of July. Because it manages to do that beautifully, and then you dump that into a good sampler and life is better. And the Emacs and the ESI stuff, really, really difficult to argue with how good it is. I mean, despite the fact that compared to modern equipment, it is so painfully slow at loading.
Yes, it is. I want to circle back to that. Hey, thank you, Ivan. Rezi, I am going to go in after you, so please, I want to hear your thoughts.
Sticking kind of close to the question of whether sampling other people's stuff is good, bad, and also to the copy, transform, combine. I think there's a pretty good argument to be had coming down on maybe more than two sides on this one, but the very act of copy 2 vinyl LPs of a cool break, transform, playing them at a different speed, only using a certain portion, Now they're different. Combine, cutting back and forth between the two things so that you've isolated the loop, and now, you know, using vocalizations over that seems like a pretty, I mean, it launched a genre. It started a revolution. It made a lot of what we're doing today. It was the sort of engine behind that. I mean, it happened concurrently, I think, with some other movements, but before electronic sampling, that kind of reinterpretation, transcription, and expression using other people's actual material that already had some sort of emotional component or piece of history in it. I mean, there's magic in that. There is something that happens, and whether people are precious or really generous with their work sort of depends on how the person getting sampled or reinterpreted feels about it. And I don't know whose rules those should be, whether they're strictly for the originating source artist or for culture to sort of decide, or something in between them.
Okay, that's great. Thank you. Wow. I love this conversation. I just noticed Diana and Adam, you know, you're welcome to jump in. Apparently I have to change my bit rate, but I don't know how to do that. Funny, because we're talking about samplers. Yeah, I don't know. It was attempted humor there. So my first thought is get a sampler. And that can be a software sampler or a real sampler. Get a sampler. If you can't afford a real sampler, get a software sampler. There are free samplers out there that are softwares. The reason being is that there is a process. There is a different process to using a sampler as opposed to using your DAW. It's just different. And if you can get an emulation of an emulator 2 or an Emacs or an Akai or something like that, that is actually using because the way samplers are laid out, like the really classic ones, they were designed in the 80s, where, you know, like Ivan said, where they had no idea about good thoughts on GUI. They were a whole bunch of coders going, how do I do this thing? And it's all like, these are menu options before there were really computer menu options and before there were really websites for everybody to be basing logical thought on. And when you really look at the Emacs, that thing is so illogical, but hey, who cares? And then you look at like the emulator 4 and they start getting more logical then, and ironically it loses its magic, but that's another conversation. Get a sampler. And like I said, if you can't afford a sampler, there are free ones you can use in software. And that process is critical to sampling. That's, you're taking an idea or something, translating it into another language for a machine, and then you are having a conversation or an argument with the machine to try and create music with it. It's not just plonking audio files into your DAW and adding effects. It's not that at all. This is the magic of sampling. Secondly, Brett brought up effects and atmospheres and shit like that. Oh my God. It is the greatest thing in the world to have large ambiences. Hey man, this is fucking industrial music and we are all about that shit. To have large ambiences just baking away slowly all throughout your track. And you know, man, I've got to fucking get back into that. I'm getting back. Thank you, Brett. Challenge accepted. I need to get back into doing that because I haven't done that in a few albums. Ice Planet 9000 needs to do this. And it's wonderful to find a movie where they've just got this big thing going on. Here's something even more fun. Create one yourself. Listen to that movie and listen to what's going on. Watch that YouTube video that Alex Ball did on the Terminator 2 soundtrack. It's all Fairlight. That is inspiring as it gets. Man, that shit blows my mind. That will inspire you to go, well, I'm going to get a sound and then I'm going to use my plugin sampler and I'm going to change the bitrate to 8K. So if I drop it like an octave or two, it's just going to be grungy. Oh, as Adam said in the chat, these are a few of my favorite things. This is what samplers throw back at you when you throw shit at samplers. It's fantastic. And I talked about that, and that's all I want to talk about. But I see Alex's hand. Let's go, Alex.
Yeah, I feel definitely that the sound of sampling has changed since people moved away from picking a part of a record to using something like Splice and using like specifically pre-made audio snippets to be used in songs. I feel like that has made an impact, and you feel a huge difference between something modern and something that maybe Fatboy Slim did in the 90s. And I had also something else to say. Yeah, samplers also you can get even hardware samplers for relatively affordable. I think there's this more toyish Teenage Engineering one for maybe $100. And of course, the arcade samplers from the 80s and 90s are now relatively cheap. I think like 150 euros here. Yeah, if you're willing to put up with them and have the money, they're also quite affordable.
Brilliant. I'm going to talk about that some more too. Rezi, I'm actually going to go in after you because I'm going to shoot my mouth off some more.
Yeah,
Go,
this
Rezi.
is just a quick one. Like, I can only imagine a world that sampling other people's stuff kind of wholesale and putting it under your track didn't exist, where I would never have learned about Holy Ghost by the Bar-Kays and never heard that track on its own because I got turned on to it by its use as a, common breakbeat. So even just for that, I'm grateful.
Bloody awesome. Okay, so I'm going to give yours a challenge now. Here we go. It's the challenge, and if you're watching this and if you're on this, you're fucking doing it, and that's it. You are going to create a 10-second atmospheric track, and it's going to sound like the sort of atmospheric track that's going to be used in a movie like RoboCop or Terminator, because we're industrial cliches, and fuck you. You are allowed to create these sounds using a microphone in your house or outside. You can go to a public domain thing and pull down a part of a movie, but that's boring. You are going to use an old sampler, and that is going to be either a software sampler or a real sampler. And also, Alex, I'm going to add to your list the E64, the EMU E64. They're super cheap, and same with the ESI samplers. They're all going up in price again, but you can get a fucking good sampler for under $500 these days. Man, I'm seeing 20 K2000s and 2500s under fucking $500. The K2000 is just, oh my God, don't start me on that sampler. Anyway, 10 seconds. It's going to be a loop. And it's just going to be this big, scary thing that comes and goes under the music, and it's going to be used to scare people. And then you're going to share it with everyone on ANGELSPIT'S Discord. Booyah! That's what you're going to do. And if you don't do it, you can't be my friend. Razzie, I saw your hand, but now I don't see it anymore.
Yeah, I thought it was hypothetical. I didn't know this was applied.
Oh. What is
I thought you were just going to ask what we do, but you're actually telling us to go out and do it.
No, you're going to do it.
Yeah.
That's it. I want to hear, what are you going to do? Tell me.
I'm going to get my brick of D cells that makes it enough to be 12 volts to plug into my portable Casio DAT machine and plug a cheap ass stereo Sony mic into it with a splitter that goes into the left and right RCA inputs at the wrong level. And I'm going to go to the first construction site that I find with a large piece of loose sheet metal and another piece of extremely heavy road plate. And I'm going to ease into it, moving across the road plate and ease back out over 10 seconds. That's
awesome. That's really awesome. Actually, if you can, and I'm really extra points on the mic and on a DAT with a big battery pack. And actually, what you need to do is take your early 90s cell phone out as well, your brick cell phone, and we can call you but we won't be able to reach you because you'll be out of range. That would be legit. Let's do that. If you can go to a junkyard, look, I know it's a cliche, but I don't care. If you can go to a junkyard, go there. And remember, have a pop guard, pop filter. Here's my thing, and it's right here. And the batteries just fell out everywhere. Pop filter. Have a pop filter on your recording device. Have spare batteries, because you're gonna run out of them. And if you need a card, take a spare card. And make sure the way you hold it doesn't make sound on it when you're holding it. Sonic Safaris, here we are again. It's the best thing in the world. Best thing in the world. And another really fun thing to do is if you have noise suppression filtering software, go out with the pop guard, record something outside, get a chunk of the wind, and then keep pulling. Or if it's in a room and there's a background sound, keep pulling it out. Apply the filter, then pull it out. Normalize, compress. Apply the filter, pull it out, normalize, compress. Keep doing it like 3 or 4 or 5 times, and you're going to be left with this artifact, and the artifact sounds like there are ghosts talking in the room. It is the coolest thing. That's all I got. God damn it, I love talking about samplers. Does anybody else want to change the subject? Or do we want to add to shit what's going on? Talk to me.
I have a quick question which is sort of related. Do you know where to get unformatted floppy disks? Because this Cork doesn't want floppy disks which are formatted for DOS systems. But most floppies you can buy in this, I forgot the number, but the last ones that were available, they are formatted for DOS and it doesn't really like them.
That's fascinating. I don't know. Resi might. I have the same problem on the Emacs, but I can stick anything in there, and there's a step I can skip, which is you go to the process with a disk in it, and then at the last minute you pull it out and stick a new one in there, and go format that one, you bitch.
I could swear last time I had to get around this was with SideQuest cartridges, mounted it on Mac, and there was a utility that would format it for Akai, for example. So maybe there's a utility that you can get a USB drive and do it that way as an alternative.
And also, remind me, Alex, what sort of Korg is it?
It's 01/W.
01W. Fantastic, dude. That thing is the ambient machine. It's got the biggest, beautiful ambient sounds. Is it 8-note or 16-note?
Up to 32, but only if you use one oscillator per voice.
Wow. Love it. Okay. Love it. Thank you, Brett. I see your hand. Fill me with your demonic wisdom.
I was actually just going to ask if you know what standard the disk needs to be formatted to.
I think it's the same as Atari ST, but I don't know what the name is.
Huh.
I want to, if I remember right, I think Atari used like FAT16. It was an old standard. But the reason I was bringing that up is if you can identify what that standard is, you can probably format the disk yourself in your PC to whatever standard you need. It's been a long time since I've had an Atari. I did start on that platform, but yeah, it's been a long time. I don't remember exactly which format it uses, but nonetheless, if you can identify, so it should be like, so most of the time, like MS-DOS uses either modern uses either FAT32, or you'll even see them formatted in NTFS now. You'll find thumb drives and everything else formatted that way. But you don't have to keep it that way. And furthermore, if you have any trouble at all formatting it in Windows, you can pull down a Linux virtual machine and gain a lot more options for formatting. All that's
Thank you very much. I love intense geek talk. I do know that Ataris use TOS, which is called the operating system. That's what it's called. Alex, if you want to reply to that, please do. Otherwise, I'm going to throw it to Mr. Ivan.
No, I think I've had so many good ideas. Yeah, and yeah, I'm happy.
Okay. Oh, I'm actually thinking 10 seconds isn't long enough. We need 30 seconds. Ivan, hit me.
All right,
And Adam, why don't you jump in the damn conversation? Ivan, go.
Alex, I do have one last thought. If the Korg is able to format a unformatted disk that currently is unformatted, what you might be able to do is just throw a blank floppy into into PC land. Just get into fdisk, maybe through a Linux virtual machine, and then unformat the disk with fdisk. Just wipe the table and leave it clean. And as far as the next machine to load that floppy is going to be concerned, this is an unformatted disk. I should format it.
Just to follow that up real quick, I think the thing we're running into is Atari disks might be constant linear velocity rather than rotational velocity. They might have that other thing where they just go one speed the whole way through and they put less data, which you can't, I think, write and format on a utility on your PC, but that might be the obstacle. Says Reddit.
This is fantastic nerdery. Alex, talk to me, baby.
Yeah, I actually tried to erase the data with a magnet, but that didn't work. And also just to overwrite it with the internal formatting system didn't work. So that's why I'm so frustrated. Yeah.
Alex, once again, you've gone above and beyond in industrial duties where you tried to format it with a magnet. Like, that's basically a digital abortion right there. Next time, try a hammer or a nail. Put a nail
But I
through
need
it.
to insert it again, so it can't be too brutal.
God. And it's just the way. No, Rob, we're not trying OmniFlop. We're talking about nails now. Yeah, it's just, you are the epitome of German industrial. You really are. In fact, I think next time we talk, you have to spike your hair up, wear leather pants, and we're going to call you a Blixer. And bang on stuff. Dude, yeah. Just as a sideline, Mike sent me a whole bunch of, Mike the Liar from Basement Labs sent me a whole bunch of crazy shit. And one of them was a whole bunch of Neun Barton stuff. And if you need to get inspired, Halber Mensch, Half Man, holy fuck. That is so amazing. Like, it's as if, every now and then you watch something and you go, I think this is a junction where reality split and we could have gone this way, or we could have taken ecstasy and invented EBM. And unfortunately, we went down the EBM and ecstasy road. If that alternative reality where we went, Habermensch, let's do that. We'd be in space by now, hardcore. It's fantastic. That stuff is like so beautifully confronting. Alex, talk to me.
If I may, I can geek out a bit about Neubauten.
Please.
First of all, they don't consider themselves industrial, they consider themselves alternative rock. The next thing is their music came, or their style of music came to be because they were on demonstrations and they used to bang against the barricades by the police rhythmically, and that's where this style of playing come from. The improvisations they did while demonstrating on the street, and just getting these patterns. And of course, the story that the drummer had to sell his drum kit, and so they just brought in some scrap metal and used that. Yeah, but the style of playing came from demonstrations where they just banged on the barricades.
That is mind-blowingly amazing, because like, I think also about Atari Teenage Riot, and about how so much of their shit is, and Devo is also a band that that they came about from protesting. Fantastic stuff. Like, wow. Yeah. Once again, build, Steam that magnetized the world. Go crazy with stuff, build stuff, make instruments, get a piece of metal or a piece of plastic or a piece of something and make it the core instrument in a track that you're working on. Suspend. Like, I went to Home Depot here, and I got this 24-inch by 18-inch piece of metal, and I went, one day I'm going to turn that into a reverb plate. Of course I never did, but it's the sort of thing I just want to hang from somewhere and just use it as an abstract, permanently out of tune symbol or something. It's just so lovely. Oh yeah, hey, thanks, Alex. This is some software called EXMP, and that's predominantly for EMU stuff, but it also works on a whole bunch of other pieces of software and stuff as well. It will allow you to format floppy disks. I don't know if it works for Korgs or not, but you can Emacs, Akai, and EMU floppy disks as well. Oh, Brett, that was you, Brett. Thank you so much, Brett. And EMXP is the core piece of software I use to talk to the Emacs, because Alex, the other thing is that you rip the drive out and you put in, although I don't know if you can do that on the Korg, and you put in like a Gotek drive emulator.
You can, but I just want to do quick backups and don't, because you can't put in samples, only maybe patch data. So it's just for me, so I can go back if I messed up a program or something. Or maybe switch between different sets of, because it has only 200 save slots. Yeah, so that's why I sort of wanted, so I can quickly back stuff up.
That's excellent. This came in from Rob. Another creepy technique is to record room ambience and play some weird music and voice background in the background, so it's only just audible. Awesome. Yeah, experiment. Once again, experiment. That's the lesson of the day, is experiment and experiment some more. Do we want to continue? Yeah, Alex, go.
Maybe for the challenge you said, do you have any good way of making a system treat maybe 98 or 96 K wave files as 48 or so, for 84 kilohertz or something? So just the same data but play it at half speed.
This is interesting. You can resample it on your computer, and yay, but the great thing about Emacs and anything that's pre kind of 1990, actually anything that's pre like 89, is so what samplers started doing is they got the sample and they would do a calculation on it to the output of the sample is still 44.1, but they've dropped the pitch of it, but they've run it through a converter. I think I've got this right, but the old Emacs and the old Akais and the old, those classic crappy samplers like the Mirage, they would get the sample and then they would just play it out at a slower bit rate. Bit rate? No, sample rate. So as a result, if you played it a 44.1, an octave lower, it would be 22, or another octave lower, it would be 11. And that's why they sound gritty and dirty and mean. That's why they have this sound. And that's why if you get a digital emulation, they try to emulate that. Resi, talk to me.
The other little detail in there is how it gets between those samples when you stretch it out. Same time, but only a tenth of the samples means you got to do something with the time in between those. And the interpolation between each sample can be really smooth and beautiful, and it gets dull when you bring it down, like on my S950, or it can be brutal and gritty and just go like teeth or sawtooth or, nails on a chalkboard between them without doing anything pretty to it, like on most of the things that you mentioned. And I keep a Yamaha TX16W around for that as the gritty, dirty one.
That's a great sampler. That's one of the great overlooked, forgotten samplers. So I actually thought the 950, I didn't think it interpolated it. I thought it just went gritto.
It does not.
So it interpolates.
I had, by comparison, yeah, I don't know algorithmically what it's doing, but I do know sound-wise, it's a smooth, mellow, there's an analog filter in there. There may be a combination of those effects leading toward making it sound pretty dull once you transpose down. And you can do internal resampling on it, but it's not quite the same as these, like, just transpose it. And it gets gritty kind of samplers. It's a very different effect.
That's one thing about, like, maybe that's why there's a certain era of samplers that are super cheap now, like the 90s samplers, because they didn't have that grit to them.
Well, even the S1000 has a whole different feel to it when you're doing it. I mean, I got rid of mine a long time ago, but as compared, even if you loaded the same sample into it, transposing or resampling sounded very different. It was brighter and harsher from the 1000, but not gritty.
Interesting. Yeah, man, that's fascinating. And that's one thing I do love about the, obviously I love about the Emaxes is when it goes low, it goes angry. But it's also, if you're using a K2000 or something like that, they're kind of smooth down there. Anyway, yeah. And if you're going to get a Kurzweil, get a 2000 or a 2500, because they are dirty, mean machines like me. Does anybody else want to change subject here? I'm making notes about things I want to sample because I'm really super inspired by this. What do we want to talk about? Humans? Nothing?
I've been really fascinated by a genre called Brazilian funk, because it sounds very aggressive, but it's also really minimalist. So you basically have just a vocal and a very bright in frequency spectrum synth line, and not much more, maybe drums, but yeah, but it's super minimalist, and I find that quite fascinating that you don't have like this full arrangement with kick drums and hi-hats and basses and pads, but only maybe one synth that jumps around all over the place and fills out the whole frequency spectrum. Yeah, and I find it fascinating because it's like usually the first preset on a synth was this bright thing that you couldn't use on anything because it was like clogging everything up. But it's that as a whole track, and yeah, it's sort of inspiring, and I've been thinking about it in the past days.
Alex, can you hit us with a band who you'd recommend that, or a track? Would be interesting because I think you've spiked everyone's interest. While you're doing that, I'm going to throw it to Dr. Raz.
I was going to pretty much say the same thing, but also that, like, the fascination with filling up a mix with two different components instead of uncountable tracks. I hope to be able to have a project that focuses on that someday. So I'd love to listen to some of this and get my ears around it. It's like such the opposite of what I always end up doing.
So
Really
there's, sorry, thank you. There's actually there's a band called Horrortron, and they were around like 10 years ago, and they were, I will call them a precursor to dubstep. They were mind blowing. In fact, there was a whole bunch of stuff that was happening in dubstep land that was pre-Skrillex, and it was fascinating stuff where they would just get one or two massive sounds and it would fill the spectrum. And okay, this huge sound's going to play the riff. Now this one's going to play it. Now back to that one. Oh, now we're going back to this other one. And it was really, really good stuff. And we will put this Dudo in here. Thank you, Alex. So this is and it was called Brazilian Funk, right?
Yes, but not funk, but funk with an O instead of an U.
Okay.
PHOONK.
Okay. We show.
And that stuff is super not with the best practices of mixing, but that sort of makes it interesting for me because it feels like something would make, like, maybe as a teenager or I don't know, someone without any experience, sort of outsider artists kind of way, but it has like this feeling and energy, and I find that really inspiring.
Fantastic. Thank you very much. Brett, tell me about your brain.
I'm curious if anyone has, then this is a bit of a change of course here. So if anyone else has anything, by all means. But I've been trying to play with Shephard Tones lately. And I've got an idea for that. I'm curious if any of y'all have been successful in mixing those. I know you need to use a sine wave basically, but what I found for mixing those is a little different.
Here's Adam. Rezi, I see your hand. I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I'm going to jump in as well.
Yeah, to be a purist, you can do the actual Shephard Tone barber pole effect with a sine wave, but you can also just do a lot of things with a scale where your instrument or velocity programming or whatever rises and falls overlapped with another instance of the same thing or with another instrument. There's some examples in rock music where full band experiments with that, and there's also I want to say no, I have not achieved it. That was your question. Have I done it? I've experimented with it. I've tried in the looper to do it with guitar a little bit, and you get some effect. But there is more to be sort of teased out of that than just slavishly trying to do it as a audio illusion Shephard tone, but use the spirit of that thing in your song composition, like canon style or fugue style. And also for rhythm, another thing that I've wanted to stick into that is the rhythmic analogy of reset patterns, where they speed up and slow down in a way that you can't detect where they loop. The same way that the pitch sounds like it's ever increasing, the tempo sounds like it's ever increasing. So I think we just wrote an album collectively with the past 3 things that we've talked about. Like,
and it would be
record here.
Quite brilliant. Pretty fucking hardcore. Alex, I want you to tell me about your hardcore brain. Go.
So maybe for clarification, if someone listening doesn't know what a Shephard's tone is, it's basically the equivalent to an optical illusion, but in audio, and it's a tone that either seems to be endlessly, infinitely rising or infinitely falling in pitch. And the way you do it is that you have several frequencies in octaves, and as you go higher, the higher ones get quieter, and deeper ones appear from below and fade in, and that's why you have like the sensation of rising or falling, but the main pitch stays the same basically. And funnily enough, I've thought about doing the same thing on my Rephase DX, which is an FM synthesizer, and with them you can say that certain oscillators have certain loudness at certain frequency ranges, and I think that could be a good way to do it, but I haven't tried it yet.
Brilliant. Thank you. Yeah, I did kind of. The trick is you gotta, like Alex said, you gotta fade them out, fade them in, then it slowly moves up. I think I go 2 octaves, and when it hits the first octave high, so it starts at 1 octave, when it hits the second octave, I'll fade in the second one. And then by the time the first one gets to the second octave, it fades out. And then by that stage, the second one that came in is now at the second octave. I bring in the third one. And it's just kind of like cogs, like threads of a cog. Another fun thing to do is be inspired by that idea and take chords. And you may have a chord progression, and what you're doing is you're slowly building the chords. It might be a really simple chord progression, you know, whatever. And those chords keep going up. So they keep playing inversions of themselves, so they're slowly moving up. And you do the same thing where there's 3 different sounds, and they all fade in and fade out. They fade in at the beginning and they fade out at the top, and they go up 2 octaves. And in the bottom range, they're really simple. And then by the time they get to the top, they might be simple again, but in the middle part, they're complicated, because when the chords are down the bottom, you don't want to have too many stacked chords because they're a bit muddy. So you take the same idea, and they're threads on a corkscrew, ever so slowly moving up. And I did that on Ice Planet, and it has a really ethereal feeling. And of course, another wonderful thing you can do is go down. And that is a wonderful thing for dragging the soul into the depths of doom. Into the depths of doom. And then you can start doing the same concept with basses and stuff like that. So instead of the bass playing the bass note, the bass starts playing inversions and stuff. And it might be fun to have the bass go down and the pads go up. That could be fun. Yeah, fun ideas there from Carl. Does anybody else want to throw in on the Shephard's Tone? I think the guy's name was Alan Shepherd. I could be wrong. I did maybe make that up. I didn't say John Shepherd. If I said John Shepherd, you know I'm lying. But I think his name was Alan Shepherd. Or maybe he's a comedian from the 80s. I have no idea. Alan Shepherd sounds like a comedian who has a variety show. Welcome to the Alan Shepherd Hour. And they have a dance act and a cover band that plays some local hit, but it's really bad, with bad 80s dancers with top hats. I just ruined
Alan
that
Shepherd
conversation.
is an astronaut.
That's right, he was too. Thank you, Brett. Okay, so do it. Yes, the dancing astronaut. That's it. That's actually a great pitch for a show. I want to do a show called The Dancing Astronaut, and he has a cat. That got abstract. Okay, does anybody else want to throw in about anything else at all? Or, of course, if not, we could rape to NTV TV because it's the place to go. Anyone? Seriously, nobody has anything to talk about because we're not doing this next week. Oh, and by the way, Kiri, I saw your thing. Throw your ideas for samples in ANGELSPIT'S Discord, and I shall do something similar as well. Adam, you don't want to say anything?
Well, you all sucked me in on the whole like sampling thing, and then you changed topics.
Well,
so-
we can go back to sampling. Oh my God.
Well, when I was watching on Facebook, y'all were talking about the old Akai samplers and such, and I one of the things that Dr. Dre did, right, was he would they would take the sample. So you had this limited time, like a few seconds, that you could sample. So what they would do is they would speed up the record by hand, right, and then drop the needle on it, record a few seconds of it, and then stretch that so that, and then of course, that's when you get that pitch change as well. So a lot of the old hip hop records, used sampling in that way, where, you know, using a faster break and then slowing it down. But the real trick was the speeding it up with your finger to make the record go faster so that you could get more bars basically in the sample in the short sampling time.
And something absolutely also very wonderful about that is you can get, you start getting some great sounds. I heard this wonderful thing with the early samplers. We used to be able to do pitch correction, and it would like make it, if you change the pitch by like 150, 200, it would start phasing, and they'd take that and they'd lift it up an octave or two, like a few notes, and it would be the most wonderful fucked up thing you've ever heard. Alex, I see your hand go.
I have a different topic, so maybe if the others want to contribute to the same topic, I can go in it again.
Okay. Well, I saw Rezi's hand. Rezi, do you want to jump in on sampling before?
I was gonna reminisce about. I'll make it quick. Giga sampler.
Absolutely no reminiscing about samplers on this channel. None, but
Right.
please go.
Just the how crazy it is that the sampling time was such a constraint that when Giga Sampler with the Giga Piano library came out in like 92, I want to say, or something, it was like, now we can have all of the release durations of the piano strings at full length and just keep the attacks in memory. And we have just enough time to load them off disk and spool them in as you're playing. It's like, wow, that's complicated.
It was kind of
Here
like
we are.
almost like a Mellotron, really.
I mean, in some ways, yeah, pulling it up as it goes. You know.
It's also, I will say that having a sampler with, you know, the great thing about old samplers is you have 30 seconds or 20 seconds or less to have every single sound you require for the track. And it's a most wonderful thing. Here's Diana. Yeah, and that's another really great thing about them. You know, so if you end up using a software sampler, if you can build that into it, that'd be great. Because remember, within all of these restrictions, there is a whole bunch of inspired possibilities. Alex, do you want to take us to Magic Land?
Yeah, maybe one quick thing to samplers that you said, and I agree with. The thing I like about old sample libraries and old rumplers is they had like so little memory that every sound had to pop. Because now you have like so many sounds that are maybe run of the mill, and back then everything had a purpose. And I think that was a good thing in a way. Anyway, what I wanted to say is, let me see. I've seen artists upload, or maybe fans, and then later artists upload versions of their songs that are sped up or slowed down. Basically just the same thing, in a different repitched. And I was asking if this was maybe a good way, if an artist were to have tracks and maybe to have more uploads, more content, to generate that without too much effort, but have something that maybe some people are looking for. Maybe you put the singles out as a second EP so that it doesn't clutter up your Spotify page or whatever. But what do you think? Is that a good thing? Is it a bad thing? Maybe should that be left to the fans? Do you listen to such things?
I personally don't. I have no thoughts on it, but I know Mr. Razzie does.
It took me a minute to even come around to Chopped and Screwed and Witch House and just like playing a slow version of stuff as a thing. But I got it eventually. But I'm still really not getting pitching it up. Like, that's not a sound you want. That's the opposite of mad, evil, terror. It's like silliness. Like, why would you want to do that? Other than it fits better in your limitations on your, video clip. Like, it's not the spirit of things that I want to go for in life. So I don't know. Not my thing, but people are sure as hell fucking doing it.
Gnomes and fairies, I guess. Thank you. Adam, blow my mind.
Well, on the chopped and screwed thing, I'm definitely one of those cats that does a lot of time stretching in my sampling work. So I'm probably of the group here, I'm probably the most guilty of copyright violations because I do a lot of bootlegging and unofficial remixes and sampling and stuff. Of course, when I'm doing something for release as an original, I don't sample from other recordings, but in a lot of the pieces that I've done, like my Bad Witch, for speaking of Witch House, Bad Witch, right? Like one of the coolest things on Bad Witch is I took like a marching band snare roll and slowed that down, and it makes the most amazing, creepy groove. Pitching up though, so like pitching up is really useful because that's how you get those like kind of sounds, you know what I mean? Like I did that a lot in my entertainer mix, right, where I use the vocals, the hip hop vocals, right? And what's the one? I probably it's the 99 Problems one. I use the vocals from 99 Problems, but a bitch. And well, and some of the other ones I've done too. I definitely use that pitching up and pitching down trick, and it's really easy to do in Reason. I mean, you know, we're talking about the hardware samplers, you know, of course now with the DAWs being so advanced and stuff, you know, I've been using Reason for a long time, and that was kind of originated as a synthesizer sampling sequencing program, and so you know, the stretching quality on that is amazing. You know what Razi was saying about the interpolation between the samples when you're downgrading a sample is very, very clean. And it gives you a lot of control for quantizing. You can really get into the, you know, nuances, the 16ths, the 32nds even, and get your samples a lot tighter than, you know, the OG Akai APC 60s or whatever it was, MPC 60, I guess it was. But yeah, that's my 2 cents there. Like sampling is not a crime.
Fantastic. Thank you, Adam. Alex, destroy my head.
I think the reason you want to pitch something up is to make it pop more and to make it more aggressive and stand out-ish and present and maybe hyper real. I think some Prodigy records are a trick that was one in some records was to record them and play them, release them at a higher pitch, to just play the tape at a higher pitch. So maybe for a dance record it would be more energetic and so on. And I think that might have happened and with some Prodigy records.
Cool. Everybody's in the place. Brett, blow my mind.
I also had a minor comment towards pitching up. I regularly use a vocal effect, but that I modeled after. I think it was actually the movie Legend, where you had the little demons and such that had the higher pitched voices. So what I do is I run 2 granulizers. So you have clean voice pitch. I send 1 granulizer to the left ear and I pitch it down. I send 1 granulizer to the right ear and I pitch it up, but I pitch it up to that state where I'm actually targeting the kind of sound that, or the frequencies that babies and creatures in trouble are using. And then you put those all together and you get a pretty disturbing effect.
I love that. That's really beautifully evil. There's a conversation to be had about pitching up, but first, here's the Raz.
Same conversation. I mean, I dig it when John Lennon does it 10% to make it sound like he's tripping his dick off. It's kind of fun. It's got a different sound to it. But when they do it like, 50% or 100% and you're into Alvin and the Chipmunks territory, I guess there's a gradient there somewhere. Maybe I was erring too strongly to the side of the TikTok Aerosmith pitched up Walking in the Sand sample that went around and up my ass sideways. It's my own problem.
That's all good. I think someone needs a hug. It's really funny how some things have like they're triggering things, and I think pitching up could be yours. Nickelback's mine. Not for Adam. He loves Nickelback. Speaking of Nickelback, here's Adam. Adam, you're muted.
Unmuting. There we go. Yeah, big fan of Nickelback, sure. But yeah, now you made me completely forget what I was gonna say. Rosie, what did you say? It's like, oh, you know what it was? It was the John Lennon thing. It was the John Lennon thing because I immediately thought of the Beatles records, right? Like, Magical Mystery Tour and Sgt. Pepper's and stuff, right? Like, holy cow, talk about, so this is before the digital samplers and all. But yeah, what's his name? Fifth Beatle producer, brain fart.
George Martin,
there you go. He was doing all kinds of crazy stuff with bits of tape and reversing the bits of tape and sampling from television and all of that kind of stuff. Like the whole the crazy orchestral pieces in what is it? The Woke Up, Got Out of Bed. That one on Sgt. Pepper's.
A Day in the Life.
Day in the Life. There you go. I'm having one of those days where I can't remember the names of things. Thank you, medicine. But yeah, that whole piece, that's like all sampled and cut tape and reverses and all kinds of crazy stuff. So, to continue the discussion on this, sampling has been a part of music production since at least then. I mean, he was quite famous for his creative inventiveness with the Beatles records, but I would doubt that he was anything like the first. I mean, if you go way back to like Musique Concrète, right? Musique Concrète. I don't know if I'm pronouncing that correctly, but that was all created by Found Sound tape manipulation. Not to get into I mean, for me, like, you start talking about sampling and stuff, and I go immediately to like the Lawrence Lessig kind of stuff, like what should our rights be when it comes to sampling? But I think that we wouldn't have modern music the way that we understand modern music without that sampling. And I think that the excessive greed of the major labels has really put a kibosh on creativity in this way. And I'm just gonna leave it at that because I don't want to stand on the soapbox for too long.
Thank you. And we're all on that soapbox with you. So it's really interesting that I want to talk about The Prodigy in a second. Delia Derbyshire is like really fantastic. Like, she's one of the early tape loop people. Steve Reich and those guys too. But it's really fascinating. Apparently when they got when the BBC Workshop got the big Synthy A100, she was disgusted. She wanted nothing to do with it. And you should see the stuff she did with tape loops. It was off the chart. I'm pretty sure she was doing stuff before the Beatles. I actually think she was one of their inspirations. I'm not sure on that, but it's funny. I always listen to Lucy in the Sky, and it's not just like their ability to, like, the emotion in that track and the otherworldly extraterrestrial emotion in that track is like, it's amazing. Like it's amazing. It's amazing. So yeah. So but fast tracking, it's funny that, you know, when the whole Jabba thing happened with like was it Jabba? Happy Hardcore and you know, in the early 90s with when they were pitching up. And Prodigy was doing the Experience and the Everybody's in the Place and all that stuff. You know, like Alex said, the amount of crazy excuse me again, the amount of crazy energy that pitching a sample up brings to something, it's dynamic. And I still love the sound of pitching up drums, man, pitching up a drum loop. And, you know, once again, if I've got a drum loop, I have to use an old sampler because it's going to give it a sound. It's going to give it a sound. And yeah, just re-exploring what they used to do to create the wild energy of that 90s rave, man. Really fantastic stuff. They had no idea what they were doing. They were just fucking around, and the exploration of it was just fantastic stuff. So yeah, play with it. That's what I reckon. Does anybody else want to pick up on this, or are we at a point of our existence where we're thinking something else? Well, I tell you what, since we've hit that super exciting part, I'm suggesting we raid to MTV TV. Let's do that. So once again, thank you so much. We're going to do that in a minute, Diana. Thank you so much for being a part of this. Every Saturday, except next Saturday. We're not doing it next Saturday. Woo! But the Saturday after, we sure are. We will be here doing Art of Rock. Please like and subscribe or whatever to ANGELSPIT'S Twitch, because there's going to be more stuff going on there very soon. Also, this is brought to you by ANGELSPIT'S Patreon. There it is, a couple of bucks a month. You're going to help keep me going, and I will really appreciate it. ANGELSPIT'S new album, The Bastard Gods, is happening in a big way. Go grab it. And it's BANDCAMP Friday, next Friday. Grab it then. And remember, there's some crazy music happening on the Industrial Incisions playlist. Please go and listen. Please go and get that. There's a whole bunch of old tracks and a whole bunch of new tracks. But now we are going to raid on over to MTV TV because it's just awesome. And we're going to stay on here for a bit with mics muted and chat until the raid ends. Maybe we'll leave mics on. Yeah, let's do something different. Anyway, this is Art of Rock, and we'll see you not next week, but the week after. Feel free to turn your mics on, because fuck it, we're done. And let's raid. Kerry, welcome. Hot damn. Woo! There you go. Let's raid. And thank you so much for joining us. And we're just going to hang back here and have a chat. And let me know when we've raided. And thank you so much. And probably talk about samplers. Meow. Meow. Meow.
I'm full of cats.
I am cats. Cats rest. You know, cats only advanced technology, etc. So they can they encourage us to advance technology so they can take advantage of it, because that's what it's really all about.
They do have a biological weapon that has effects on your brain.
Yes.
I remember what it's called, but I forgot. The worm.
Yeah, and it's pretty prevalent. It's pretty wild.
Another thing I can't remember the name of today. God.
I'm trying to remember the name of it.
Toxoplasmosis, I think.
Toxoplasmosis. Thank you.
That's it.
That's what it
I have
is.
that.
Your mom has that.
She got it for you.
I had to do it. Have we rated yet, Diana?
Yes.
Okay, fantastic. I'm gonna kill this craziness. I actually don't know how to. I don't know how to kill the stream. Resi, how do I kill the stream? Resi's left. Great. The one moment we need Resi.
No.
How do I
I'm
kill
still-
it?
Go,
Stop streaming.
yeah, go back through the same
Oh, look,
path you went.
look,